to the 38th Hayley-Roxanna Crafts Quick Cross Stitch video, where I share information, hints and tips on one area of cross stitch in a short video. In this video, I am focusing on how to do a knot start. Knot starts can be a bit of a controversial subject amongst cross stitchers, as some are very strict about not using knots anywhere in their projects. This is not a view I have, and I quite often use knots to secure my thread. My view is, as long as the back of my cross stitch is not impacting the front, I can do whatever I like. And if that is using knots, then that is fine. I have started to use loop starts occasionally, but there are times where that is no good, especially if you are trying to be frugal with your threads and want to use as much of a length of thread as possible. There is also the issue that loop starts cannot be used with an odd number of threads. So I'm going to show how I use knots to secure my thread when I start stitching. I'm using 2 strands of thread for my demonstrations again, but what I say applies to however many strands of thread you are using. So when I'm knotting my thread, I have 2 rules. 1, the knot needs to be as near the end of the thread as possible. And 2, the knot needs to be as small as possible while still being large enough not to go through the hole in the fabric. So this is how I knot my thread. Okay, wrap it around my finger, take it under, hold my needle to pass it underneath and pull it. And then I will use my needle to just gently coax the knot as near to the end of my thread as possible. I will even get it further down than that sometimes. But if you find you've got a little bit extra here, you can always trim that down. But like I said, if you're trying to be frugal with your threads, you want to get that knot as near to the end as possible so you haven't really got to trim anything off. More often than not, especially with using 2 strands, 1 knot is enough. But if I feel that it isn't, then I will do a second knot. And particularly when I'm using 1 strand, I will do this. Okay, and to do a second knot, I will just do exactly the same as before. Like that. I don't want to actually pull this knot tight though. But then I will just use my needle to coax that knot to finish over the top of the first one. Okay, but for now I'm just going to pull that out because I don't want to do 2 knots today. The 1 is enough. So once I'm happy with my knot, I can then start stitching. And as you do this, as you make your first stitch, you've just got to be careful not to pull too hard and pull that knot all the way through. Okay, you want to pull it just so it sits right by the hole. Okay, so it doesn't actually come through. And then you can just keep stitching. However, something I have started to do to ensure that my knot's not going to pull through my work, especially if I'm trying to do it as small as possible, is that when I insert, taking my needle back through my fabric to complete my first stitch, I will then just try and catch the thread just under my knot. So it's almost like doing a loop start. However, I do find that even if you're using 1 strand, you can still do this because you can just split the strand of thread to catch it. But if you're using an even number, then you can just go between your strands. Just pull it like that. Okay, so like I said, it's a bit like doing a loop start. And that just gives me a little bit extra security that that's not going to come through. And then I can just continue stitching as normal. Whilst knots are quick and easy and don't require you to be able to see the back of your work, they aren't recommended if your work is going to be professionally judged. You may also just not like having knots on the back of your work, and that is fine. But if you want to use a knot, then use one. It's okay. I'll show you the back of one of my projects just so you can see what it looks like when you've used knots. So this is a project where I'm actually stitching with 3 strands of thread. So my knots are slightly bigger and the back stitching is still in 1. But as you can see, you can hardly tell where they are, and I'm perfectly happy with the back of my work looking like this. If you have any questions about knot starts, please pop them in the comments. In the next quick cross stitch video, I will demonstrate gridding Aida fabric.